Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She's the author of the children book I'm Not Upside Down, I'm Downside Up. No other than Miss Danielle Yaraho. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Daniel, and can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Danielle. I live in the UK. I'm an autistic and ADHD author of two books. The first one today, which I'll be discussing, is my children's book. I'm not upside down. I'm downside up. But I also have an adult fiction novel on disability fiction called Black Rainbow. I'm a keynote speaker, a blogger of a page called PDA Parenting, and I speak at different things like conferences, and I try and spread a lot of awareness and change people's views on what it might mean to be autistic, but particularly a female presentation of autism.
Miss Daniel, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. So, can you tell us your journey of being award-winning blogger?
Okay, well, things started unfortunately in quite a bad place. Back in 2016, I was a parent. I was actually married at that point with three children, and my eldest daughter was 5 at the time, or 4 to 5, was first started school, and the moment we entered school, she hit kind of a crisis point, and she just did not cope very well in a school, and people kind of just assumed from the outside view that she was what people think were naughty. She just was behaving and choosing to be like that, and as a parent, instantly I was blamed. It must be the way I was bringing her up. And we went through a long series of allegations through serious parent blame. And my relationship broke down, etc. And at that stage, I became so frustrated at the fact that nobody understood what we were really living and what the truth was, that I started writing. So it was the first time I kind of started writing, and I started writing about a bedtime routine that was just, to everybody else, bedtime routine, just putting your children to bed, might be quite a simple exercise. And for me, that ended up with 3 or 4 hours of absolute carnage. And the result was she was actually frightened of going to sleep. So I had to change my approach, and that's where my writing started. It became quite therapeutic, really. And later on, it became about changing the perception of how children are being treated when they're either autistic or ADHD, because a lot of children are quite misunderstood, and they develop a lot of trauma through their life by the wrong approach. So, hence the reason I'm starting to try and spread that word.
Yes, and thank you again for doing that. And what genre does I'm Not Upside Down belong?
Well, it's a book. I mean, technically it becomes a book about neurodiversity,
Yes.
but to narrow that down, it's actually a book about a profile that fits in the autism spectrum called PDA, pathological demand avoidance, um, and it's about a little girl that has that particular profile, and to explain it from the inside out, because quite often you'll read a textbook, and the kind of resources out there are often are about um, an autistic individual, but they explain how they experience it. But if you listen to somebody who has lived experience, things are very different to see it from a new perspective. So that's why I've kind of written it, but it does fall into an autism book.
What message or a takeaway do you want readers to gain from this children's book? I'm Not Upside Down.
It's about being misunderstood. It's about how you can approach things differently to a child who might not conform to what you want them to do. So they might, we might have a child that's quite spirited or wild, or is finding it very hard to follow conventional paradigms in life, and actually how can we approach that differently. So it's about changing our approach and moving away from blaming a child for what their reactions are, but actually going deep to understand and unpicking what it might mean, and changing how we nurture that and make things better for them. That's what I'm hoping with the book. But there's a lot of comedy and stuff in it, because anyone who knows a child with PDA will realize that they push the boundaries quite extremely, and they have a very, very strong sense of humor. And they often twist words and change things around. So hence the reason why it's called I'm not upside down, I'm downside up. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the takeaway from the book, really.
How much research will your children's book required, and how will you did it conduct
But
it?
without knowing at that particular time that I was autistic and possibly PDA myself, a lot of it could be quite of my own understanding without realizing, because lived experience is there. The child in it is she's called Ariana, and my eldest daughter is called Ariana. So a lot of it is based around her way of thinking. Some of the research, she actually joined me with some in some of those sessions to write with me to actually put her point of view across. And then it was kind of endless amounts of research that I would have done leading up to the book, because I'd kind of submerse myself into the world of PDA because I was writing about it every day. So I was continuously getting stories from other parents. So I kind of tried to make it more generic so that it could cover lots of other families to make it relatable.
Yes. So, what is the central conflict or problem in this children's book?
It's around her relationship with her mum or her family or anyone else, actually, how they understand her, because what they do is they come and try and get her to do the ordinary things in life, such as going to school, or um, sitting down and eating breakfast, or having a Christmas dinner with everybody. And actually the sensory stimulation and the overload that happens with these kind of things, or the difficulties that she experiences. She wants to have a friend and wants to make friends, but her social communication difficulties make that very challenging. So it's kind of like almost the fact that she wants to be she wants to conform, she wants to fit in, but she can't, and she has to learn how to be authentic so that she can experience life in a better way.
Yes, totally agree. Where and when is your story set?
It's set in present day. It's kind of quite universal, but I would say that it probably would more reflect an English family, because some of the terminology, where she's taken to something called an educational psychologist to find out why she's struggling with school. So some of those terminologies will be quite specific to England, but they are relevant to other families across the world, because everyone has different systems when their child struggles, and when they've got to kind of start making referrals to find out what's really affecting their child, why do they think differently. So yeah.
How did you structure this children's book?
I structured it into mini chapters, because the book is aimed at young readers, so we wanted children that could actually think quite deeply, but we wanted it to be very short chapters with quite a lot of illustrations in it, because a lot of children who do think differently can often be dyslexic, etc. And we wanted to make it I wanted to make it a book that was quite accessible. So they're very short chapters, and they take you through almost aspects of her life in each, and each title will have a phrase that links into the theme of that particular chapter, like the moon is my sun, or things like that. So yeah, so that's how I've structured it.
Very well said. Miss Daniel, very well said. What is your opening hook, and how will it draw to readers in?
The opening part is the fact that she introduces herself and speaks directly to the child, and and tells them if they want to find anything boring information, they have to head to the back of the book because this is not a book about that. And she goes straight into why she's upside down and in a dog's basket, or why she's doing things that don't conform to what other people expect of her. And I think that hook instantly makes you curious as to why is she like that. And also, there's a lot of humor packed in the first page or two, so I think that kind of draws the child in, because they don't want something that's boring. They want something that instantly that they can relate to.
Do you have a writing schedule or routine plan when you wrote this children book?
Unfortunately, I didn't, and that's more around the fact that I'm a full-time carer to three autistic children. So I haven't actually explained that the two younger children were diagnosed much later on as well. Um, so everything is grabbing a bit of time here or there. So often I have to set my alarm and wake up before the children get up for the day and do a little bit of writing. So I kind of try and fit it around family life because I am a full-time carer now. And they're also, all three children are not in school, so I have to kind of work my schedule around that. um, and I try and work when I'm really in a creative mode as well. Often if I've like gone for a run or I'm kind of moving around, I feel like ideas pop in and I start with that idea. I find it very hard to just start on a schedule. Like if I structure my time like I'm going to write now, I find I get a mind blank and I can't start anything. I just have to go with a section, and it might not necessarily mean I'm starting it in order either. I don't necessarily write the first chapter. I will write a section what I visualize, and then it builds around what actually happens in that, and then I can kind of work backwards. I know it's a bit strange. It's a bit like a downside up way of working, probably, but it works for me.
So, did you outline your book in detail or write more organically?
I wrote more organically, yeah, for sure. I definitely had to just keep going in and out, and once I had enough material, it had to be kind of structured together, really. I also co-wrote this with an individual who has taken themselves away from the PDA world, so I've not kind of mentioned them too much, but some of that would mean that we would come together and have two different perspectives on it, and we would try and go through what their experiences are in life and what mine, and we try and marry them up and kind of look at where the structure was so we could condense it into because my finding the plot line in that was quite tricky, so we needed to work on that together.
Did you plan to stay motivated throughout the writing process?
I tried to, but my own family situation meant that things deteriorated quite quickly, so I wasn't able to always stay on it as much as I would have liked or at the speed I would have liked. But I found once I was immersed in it and I had that flow state, I would be able to go pretty quickly and go back and forwards till it was done. Um, and I also found that, and my this is my ADHD side, I have to have a deadline. So once I had the publisher and they gave me specific deadlines to hit something for, I was able to just prioritize that amongst everything else. It would give me a reason to start something, and then I would be able to hit that flow state pretty quickly.
What tools or software did you use for drafting and editing this children's book?
For mostly, I used Word, um, and I just did it in Word because it was down to the publisher to then format it and use different editing softwares. However, that is something that has changed in my new book, which I'll come on to another time because I've used a lot more since then and had to really develop my skill set. So it's interesting doing it two different ways, published and then self-published, how much needs to go into the process.
How did you balance showing versus telling in your writing?
Um, much I really try and show much more because I use we had an illustrator to create this, And I had those particular images in my mind of what we wanted to really capture, and it's centered around the images. So for a young reader's book, you'd often have it, it'd be text heavy, but this became much more visual around what we were seeing. And we worked with the illustrator, who was also a PDA autistic individual. She was only 15 at the time, I think, and she was the person we asked to actually put the pictures together. So that definitely helped give a different perspective and helped create the chapters around those particular pictures. We definitely used a lot of dialogue, and we also used, it was almost as if the character Ariana is telling you how she feels, but she, rather than telling you, she's showing you by different experiences. So she, for instance, on the Christmas situation, how she feels when all the family come over, but she takes you through the steps of what that actually happens to her, how that builds to a crescendo when she actually has a meltdown, because every little aspect of that meal becomes intolerable for her, if that's not the clinking of the cutlery or the people's breath or the noise and etc. So rather than telling you it builds to a meltdown, we take you visually through it until you're actually so immersed you feel like you're all there having it with her.
Yes, very well said. Mr. Daniel, very well said. What is your approach to self editing your work?
um this is something I find tricky, because I tend to keep going back continuously and finding something new and wanting to add more, and I find it very hard to actually just take a step away and just go, okay, it's done, it's complete. um i I actually sat with my daughter and I went through a lot of it with her to see what she felt, because she was that much younger as a perspective. So it was easier to go back through lots of the information with her and say, you know, does this relate, or how does that feel, sort of thing. So I kind of ironed it out with a new perspective, but rather than, and then it went to the editors, who would then come back to me and give me some information and ask me to change certain things or look at certain catchphrases that might not have actually fitted, etc. But most of it was done prior to that with my daughter, and to see what her perspective on that was.
Did you seek feedback from beta readers or critic groups?
No, I didn't. I The only thing I did have peer related feedback was once the book was almost in final proof. It went for endorsements to different PDA bloggers and autistic bloggers, other people, that authors of the company, who are kind of quite well established, to see what their perspectives were on it, and they kind of came back with what their feedback was. And we also had a celebrity who has recently been diagnosed as autistic in the UK. So she actually read it and wrote a really good review as well. So it gave us some baseline to actually say, okay, this is acceptable. It's, it's been related to other peers and they accept it. So we knew it was okay to move forwards, really.
So, how did you decide which feedback to incorporate into your revisions?
Um, the only feedback really we took was from my daughter and also from the illustrator. Um, because she found certain aspects of the parent quite stressful, because she could see how that felt from a first-hand experience. So we tailored that around what we wanted to show, the balance of actually the parent trying to do her best but getting it completely wrong by the child. So we took the invoices, that we took the information from the younger readers to see, to reflect what we felt it needed to change. But that was it, really. Most of it had already been done.
Did you hire a professional editor? And if so, what states?
Um, it's Yes, the editor was done for me, and I never actually did. It was through the book publisher, So basically, they have a team of editors. So we only just have a contact really who they come back with as a group, and they'd come back with their feedback and ask you to consider things. So there's things that they would ask us to consider, like having factual information at the end of each chapter, or how to try and teach people things. But we felt that would be quite condescending for a lot of our readers. Like, we didn't want to do that, so we called it the boring parts of PDA at the very end of the book, and the child sticks their tongue out and tells you to go at the end of the book if you really want to read that, but she'll give you the first hand experience. So there was some information we didn't take from the editors because we felt our lived experience of and humor had to come through, and it had to be authentic rather than talking at the child, and also becoming just another medical book, exactly the same as what other people do, which just misses the mark. We wanted it to be more as if you're really listening to a child's view. So yeah, that's the editing side we did.
How did you ensure your manuscript is polished and ready for submissions or self publishing?
Could you just repeat that? Sorry, I didn't quite hear that one.
How did you ensure your manuscript is polished and ready for submission?
um Again, through the at that point, it was when the peer reviews had done it. Once they'd kind of read through it and accepted it, um and the manuscript came back from the publisher, they gave it to me as one last chance just to go through it and just check if we were happy before it went to the next process of going to print. And I think they sent us a proof through, and one, yeah, in physical copy. And once we kind of got through, got a taste of how it looked, and then it was ready to go.
So, Miss Danielle, what is your aspiring message for those aspiring writers out there?
Um, I think I think don't be put off if you find you get a writer's block and you really just can't follow a set schedule, because not everybody can work like that. I think trying to find what makes your flow state. So for instance, for me, I often get ideas while I'm running. They sort of ping in my mind. I've got a visual and something, and I really want to run away with that. Sometimes I even talk into my watch, quickly record like or send myself a text message so I don't forget what I want to actually do. And then when I get home, I start writing. So it's not always necessarily in order. And I think for other writers out there, sometimes they might feel the same as I did, which is just that it's too hard to start sometimes. So going when you're in that flow energy is really key, because it gives you that motivation to then come back and, carry on with it.
Very well said. Inspiring message, I should say. Sorry. Very well said, Miss Danielle. And stop procrastinating, people. If you have the passion of writing, write, and share it to the world, like
Yeah.
Miss Danielle Yata Hole. So, to sum up our discussion, what is your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Um, my short term goal is actually just to start again, because at the moment I'm in a bit of a block and I'm finding it really hard to just start a new book, because that's where I've kind of got to the point of finished my two. But my long term goal for my adult book, Black Rainbow, is to create it into a trilogy and develop where I finished with the characters. I always had it in my mind that I knew it could go so much further, and the feedback from lots of reviews on Amazon and stuff have always said like, oh, we're waiting, itching for a sequel. So that's my long term goal, is to actually finish and start and finish the trilogy and get that really tight, because I think that will fulfill me really.
Yes. So, Miss Danielle Yatahole, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Thank you very much. And if anybody does want to go on to Upside Down on JKP, there's a code saying upside down, upside 10 to get 10% off.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Danielle Yatahole, because if you support her, more empowering books to come. And she will be back next week or next month to talk about her latest book. So, Miss Danielle, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye.
Welcome, people. See you soon.